Hey friends, so today we are now going to read New York Times best-selling author of The Fault in Our Stars, John Green, who is the author. The book title is called Paper Towns, Bloomsbury. I think this is about a romance book, I think. Yeah, the thing about Margot Roth Spiegelman is that really all I could ever do was let her talk. And then when she stopped talking, encourage her to go on. Due to the facts that 1. I was incontestably in love with her, and 2. She was absolutely unprecedented in every way, and 3. She never really asked me any questions. That is the blurb, and I hope you enjoy, my viewers. Let's get on with it. Also by John Green, Looking for Alaska, An Abundance of Catherines. Will Grayson, with David Levitt then. The Fault in Our Stars. Paper Towns, John Green. To Julius Strauss Gable, without whom none of this could have become real. And after when we went outside to look at our finished lantern from the road, I said I liked the way her light shone through the face that flickered in the dark. Jack-o'-lantern, Katrina Vandenberg in Atlas. People say friends don't destroy one another. What do they know about friends? Game shows touch our lives. The Mountain Goats. Prologue. The way I figured, everyone gets a miracle. Like, I would probably never be struck by lightning, or win a Nobel Prize, or become the director of a small nation in the Pacific Islands, or contract terminal ear cancer, or spontaneously combust. But if you could consider all the unlikely things together, at least one of them will probably happen to each of us. I could have seen it rain frogs. I could have stepped foot on Mars. I could have been eaten by a whale. I could have been married to the Queen of England or survived months at sea. But my miracle was different. My miracle was this. Out of all the houses in the subdivisions in all of Florida, I ended up living next door to Margot Roth Spiegelman. Our subdivision, Jefferson Park, used to be a Navy base. But then the Navy didn't need it anymore, so it returned the land to the citizens of Orlando, Florida, who decided to build a massive subdivision. Because that's what Florida does with land. My parents and Margot's parents ended up moving next door to one another, just after the first houses were built. Margot and I were 2, before Jefferson Park and the Pleasantville. And before it was a Navy base, it belonged to an actual Jefferson, this guy, Dr. Jefferson Jefferson. Dr. Jefferson Jefferson was a school named after him in Orlando and also a huge charitable foundation. But the fascinating and unbelievable but true thing about Dr. Jefferson Jefferson is that he was not a doctor of any kind. He was just an orange juice salesman named Jefferson Jefferson. When he became rich and powerful, he went to the court, made Jefferson his middle name, and then changed his first name to Doctor. Capital D, lowercase r, period. So Margot and I were 9. My parents were friends, so we could sometimes play together, biking past the cul-de-sac streets to Jefferson Park itself, the hub of our subdivision's wheel. I always got nervous whenever I heard that Margot was about to show up, on account of how she was the most fascinating and gorgeous creature that God had ever created. On the morning in question, she wore white shorts and a pink t-shirt. That is difficult to explain how awesome I found this t-shirt at the time. Margot, as always, biked standing up, her arms locked as she leaned above the handlebars, her purple sneakers a circuitous blur. It was a steam-hot day in March. The sky was clear, but the air tasted acidic, like it might storm later. At the time, I fancied myself an inventor, and after we locked up our bikes and began the short walk across the park to playground, I told Margot an idea I had for an invention called the Ringulator. The Ringulator was a gigantic cannon that would shoot big, colored rocks into a low, very low orbit, giving Earth the same sort of rings that Saturn has. I still think this would be a fine idea, but it turns out that building a cannon that can shoot boulders into a low orbit is fairly complicated. I'd been in this park so many times before that it was mapped in my mind, so we were only a few steps inside when I began to sense that the world was out of order. Even though I couldn't immediately figure out what was different, "Quentin," Margot said quietly and calmly. She was pointing, and then I realized what was different. There was a live oak a few feet ahead of us, thick and gnarled and ancient looking. That was not new. The playground on our right, not new either. But now a guy wearing a gray suit slumped against the trunk of the oak tree, not moving. This was new. He was encircled by blood. A half-dried fountain of it poured out of his mouth. The mouth opened in a way that the mouths generally shouldn't be. Flies at the rest of his pale forehead. "He's dead," Margot said, as if I couldn't tell. I took 2 steps backward. I remember thinking that if I made any sudden movements, he might wake up and attack me. Maybe he was a zombie. I knew zombies weren't real, but he sure looked like a potential zombie. As I took those 2 steps back, Margot took 2 equally small and quiet steps forward. "His eyes are open," she said. "We got to go home," I said. "I thought you closed your eyes when you died," she said. "Margot, we gotta go home and tell." She took another step. She was close enough now to reach out and touch his foot. "What do you think happened to him?" she asked. "Maybe it was drugs or something." I didn't want to leave Margot alone with the dead guy who might be an attacked zombie, but I also didn't want to care to stand around and chat about the circumstances about his demise. I gathered up my courage and stepped forward to take her hand. "Margot, we gotta go right now." "Okay, yeah," she said. We ran to our bikes, my stomach churning with something that felt exactly like excitement, but wasn't. We got to our bikes, and I let her go in the front of me because I was crying, and I didn't want her to see. I could see blood on the soles of her purple sneakers. His blood, the dead guy blood. And then we were back home in our separate homes. My parents called 911. And I heard the sirens in the distance and asked to see the fire trucks, but my mom said no. Then I took a nap. Both my parents were therapists, which means that I'm really well adjusted. So when I woke up, I had a long conversation with my mom about the cycle of life and how death is a part of life, but not a part of life. I needed to be particularly concerned about at the age of 9, and I felt better. Honestly, I never worried about it much, which is saying something because I can do some worrying. Here's the thing. I found a dead guy. Little, adorable, 9-year-old me and my even littler and more adorable playdate found a guy with blood pouring out of his mouth, and that the blood was on her little adorable sneakers as we biked home. It's all very dramatic and everything. But so what? I didn't know the guy. People I don't know at all the time. If I am nervous, breakdown every time something awful happened in the world, I'd be crazier than a rat. That night, I went into my room at 9 o'clock to go to bed because 9 o'clock was my bedtime. My mom tucked me in and said, "See you tomorrow." And then she turned out the lights and closed the door almost all the way. As I turned on my side, I saw Margot Roth Spiegelman standing outside my window, her face almost pressed against the screen. I got up and opened the window, but the screen stayed between us, pixelating her. "I did an investigation," she said quite seriously. Even up close, the screen broke her face apart, but I couldn't tell that she was holding a little notebook and a pencil with teeth marks all around the eraser. She glanced down at her notes. "Mrs. field man from over there on Jefferson Court said his name was Robert Joyner. She told me he lived on Jefferson's Road in one of those condos on top of the grocery store. So I went over there, and there was a bunch of policemen, and one of them asked if I worked at the school paper, and I said our school didn't have a paper, and he said as long as I wasn't a journalist, he would answer my questions. He said Robert Joyner was 36 years old, a lawyer. They wouldn't let me in the apartment, but a lady named Jonita Alvarez lives next door to him, and I got into her apartment by asking if I could borrow a cup of sugar. And then she said that Robert Joyner... Sorry guys, I think that's gonna be it for this video. You can see what happened to this Robert Joyner inside part 2. See you all next time in another video. Bye!